I then listened to Paul Grewal from Coinbase talk about their Wells notice. And basically, they're mad because the SEC let them go public. And he said, how in the world? How in the world? Because the SEC let Coinbase go public.
Why on earth was this company allowed to list as a public company?
Asked Coinbase chief legal officer, clearly having a good handle on what's going on around him. And the general thrust of their argument is that this was our business back when we filed our S-1 to go public. Context here. Let me slow down for a second. The S-1 is the registration document you file with the SEC in preparation for public issuance of securities. It has a certain amount of things you need to disclose that were established initially in the 1933 Securities Act and have been expanded as part of the rulemaking process since then. Coinbase's primary thrust is that we said this is our business back then. Why did they say our S-1 was okay and we were good to go public if we were breaking the law? And this gets into, and we've talked about this with the SEC before, the SEC is primarily a disclosure and enforcement regime. And what I mean when I say that is their role is to make sure the companies they regulate are filing their required disclosures, and then when they find a breach, to enforce against the actors. They do not prevent things. They are not set up for that. That's not in their mandate. And the 1933 Securities Act itself says neither the fact that the registration statement for a security has been filed or is in effect, nor the fact that a stop order is not in effect with respect thereto shall be deemed a finding by the Commission that registration statement is true and accurate on its face, or that it does not contain an untrue statement of fact or omit to state a material fact, or be held to mean that the Commission has in any way passed upon the merits of or given approval to such security. It shall be unlawful to make or cause to be made to any prospective purchaser any representation contrary to the foregoing provisions of this section. That's the 1933 Act that defined the role of the SEC at this point. We talked about this back in our episode on the SEC. And apparently, and this is my frustration, is Paul knows that. Paul Grewal knows that that's the SEC's role. What they're trying to do with the video release and playing to the media is to muddy the waters, is to make it seem like there's ambiguity there. I even went back to Coinbase's S1 just to make sure, and they had 1,000 words in total of risk factors related to potentially changing legal or regulatory risks. That was disclosed to investors, and that's the SEC's stance on disclosure. If it's in the risk factors, the investors knew. Right? And so the entire thrust of their argument was, why were we allowed to go public? Because you filled out the form accurately.
Yeah, and I don't know. This goes back to the lawsuit that they're bringing against the SEC or the filing that they made. Whatever.
It doesn't, right? Because there's the Coinbase has received a Wells notice. This was their Wells submission. Basically, their argument back to the SEC saying, here's why it's not worth suing us. Separate from that, they had previously filed an administrative request related to SEC rulemaking, and they now filed a request in a Delaware court to try to compel the SEC to either say they will create a new rule or explicitly say, no, we are not going to create a new rule for you, Coinbase. And so all the SEC is going to do is say, okay, this went from pending to denied. Congratulations, lawsuit over. But it's still, like you're saying, part of their broader media strategy. They're trying to flood the plane and muddy the whole thing with this kind of conflicting information and make it seem one way, even if that's not reality.
They also just their entire argument is baseless. And I hear a lot of cheerleaders and people who I respect too. I don't want to suggest that only cheerleaders are the ones saying that Coinbase stands a chance here. I don't think they do. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I've seen lawyers say they have a chance here. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a lawyer, but to me, their arguments seem trivial and baseless and destined to fail. But, we'll find out. I don't know.